your English podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to your English podcast, the ideal spot to gradually improve your English with each episode. My name is Alex.
And I'm Mina. Today, we're taking a proper look under the hood at something that touches so many lives, the sometimes surprisingly bumpy road of teaching English in schools and all the daily acrobatics that teachers have to perform.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, you've got all these dedicated teachers pouring their hearts and souls into it. So why can it feel like such a struggle, to get the results everyone wants?
Yeah, it's a big question.
And we're going to try and untangle that a bit today. We'll be talking about the teaching methods themselves. Are they like helping or hindering? Then there's how the teachers are actually feeling, the whole motivation and stress side of things.
That's huge.
We'll also peek into the world of school bureaucracy and the resources available, or often, not available.
Right, the lack of resources was definitely a factor.
And hopefully we can even brainstorm some ways forward, some potential solutions.
Absolutely. What's fascinating is that when you start digging, you realize this isn't just about one or two simple fixes. It's a whole web of interconnected factors, really.
Totally connected.
As we go through this, maybe you listening can think back to your own experiences learning English or just your general impressions of how education works or sometimes doesn't quite work.
Definitely. So you've been right there in the thick of it as a school teacher.
Yeah.
What does a typical day actually look like? What are some of the main hurdles you're constantly sort of bumping into?
Oh, wow. A typical day often feels like a juggling act. Seriously. Student motivation is a perennial challenge trying to keep everyone engaged when their interests are pulled in a million different directions.
I can only imagine.
Then there's the teaching methods. Sometimes it feels like we're using tools from, I don't know, the Stone Age in a digital world. It's quite stark.
Yeah.
And the sheer volume of work, both inside and outside the classroom, it can be really draining, just the amount of it.
Right. And it's something we hear echoed a lot, isn't it? Teachers often feel like they're not getting access to the fresh, engaging materials they need,
Exactly.
and that the support from the higher-ups isn't always quite what they'd hoped for or needed.
Precisely. And this brings us to some of the core difficulties. Let's maybe start with the way English is often taught, the methodological side of thing. What strikes you as the key issue there?
For me, it's the sense that the curriculum itself can feel a bit, old-fashioned, maybe even stagnant.
Outdated is a word that comes up a lot.
It doesn't always seem to click with how young people learn best these days, And then there's this huge emphasis on drilling grammar rules.
Oh, the grammar drill.
Don't get me wrong, grammar is important, obviously, but spending lesson after lesson just dissecting verb conjugations isn't exactly going to inspire anyone to confidently order a coffee in English, is it?
No, not really. That's a really insightful point. If we look at the bigger picture, this heavy focus on memorization often comes at the expense of actually developing the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
Think about it. The whole point of learning a language is to use it, right? To connect with people, to understand different cultures.
Yeah, to talk to people.
It's not just about being able to, I don't know, recite a list of prepositions perfectly, though that has its place, maybe.
Right. And it's not just about what's happening within the four walls of the classroom, is it? There are all sorts of external pressures and bureaucratic hoops to jump through.
Absolutely. The bureaucracy in schools, honestly, it can be a real energy zapper. The endless regulations, the standardized tests,
The debt.
while they might have their place, supposedly, they often don't truly reflect a student's practical ability to use English in real life situations. Like we're measuring how well someone can swim by how many rules of swimming they can recite on paper.
Ah, That's a great analogy. Perfect.
rather than seeing if they can actually stay afloat and, move through the water.
So the test becomes the main focus, the end goal, rather than being able to actually speak English.
Pretty much, yeah. That's often how it feels on the ground.
And all of this, the methods, the bureaucracy, I can only imagine it puts a significant strain on the teachers themselves.
It undeniably does. The heavy workload, the constant feeling of being pressed for time, the struggle to find enough hours in the day to properly plan engaging lessons.
There's just never enough time.
Never. And sometimes, let's be honest, a lack of robust support from the school administration, it all adds up. It really does contribute to teacher burnout.
And we're talking about more than just being physically tired here, aren't we? It's that moral and emotional fatigue
Yeah, exactly.
that sets in when you feel like you're maybe not making the impact you want to, or that the system itself is making your job harder than it needs to be.
That's it precisely. It's feeling like you're pushing against a locked door sometimes. Can you think of any specific examples from your own experience that really highlight these challenges? Like a moment where you thought, this is just too much?
Oh, sure. Definitely. I recall one instance where I had this fantastic idea for a project, something that would have really brought the English language to life for my students. It involved them creating their own short films in English.
Oh, that sounds brilliant.
It could have been. But the amount of paperwork I had to complete beforehand, oh my goodness. The risk assessment forms, the curriculum alignment documents. It felt like I spent more time justifying the project than actually planning the fun parts,
Uh-huh. The bureaucracy trap.
Exactly. By the time I navigated all the red tape, my own enthusiasm had kind of waned. And honestly, so had some of the students when they saw how complicated it was getting.
That's so disheartening.
And then there's the constant revisions to the curriculum. You feel like you're always playing catch up, often with limited notice or proper support to actually adapt your teaching effectively.
Yeah, the goalpost keeps shifting.
That sounds incredibly demotivating, both for you and the students. And on the subject of methodology and materials, it really does feel like we're sometimes stuck in a bit of a time warp, doesn't it?
Exactly. As we mentioned, the curriculum can be quite traditional, very conservative sometimes. And the teaching methods haven't always kept pace with how students learn today. I mean, these are digital natives we're talking about.
Totally. They live online.
They're used to interactive content, fast paced information, learning through doing, through exploring. Asking them to just passively absorb grammar rules from a textbook. Well, it can feel like asking them to communicate using carrier pigeons in the age of instant messaging.
Huh. Right. It seems so obvious. You'd think we'd be making much more use of things like videos, podcasts, maybe even one like this,
Oh boy.
or English language games in the classroom. Yeah. Seems like such an obvious way to tap into their existing interests and make learning more, well, enjoyable and relevant.
What's really striking, I think, is the contrast between the wealth of engaging resources available out there in the modern world
There's so much stuff.
and what often actually makes its way into the classroom. The scarcity of up to date multimedia materials, interactive whiteboards that are actually functional and not just gathering dust.
Or broken, yeah. And user-friendly online platforms that students can use for independent practice. It feels like a significant missed opportunity to make learning more dynamic and accessible.
So, how do we start to bridge that divide then? How can we actually make the curriculum more relevant and, frankly, more exciting for today's student?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no single magic bullet, unfortunately.
No easy answer.
No. However, a shift towards incorporating more practical, hands-on tasks, think role-playing scenarios that simulate real-world conversations.
Like ordering that coffee we mentioned.
Exactly. Or project-based learning, where students can explore topics they're genuinely curious about while using English, and thoughtfully integrating interactive digital tools. These are all vital steps, I believe, in the right direction.
It just makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Get them actively using the language, not just passively studying about it.
That's the key shift, I think. Now, we've talked about the teaching itself, the methods and materials, but that administrative side of things, wow, it sounds like a whole separate universe of challenges.
It truly is. It really can be. The sheer volume of administrative tasks that teachers are often burdened with is, well, it's astonishing sometimes. Reports, assessments, documentation for everything.
Filling out forms.
Endless forms. It all eats into the precious time they could be spending on crafting engaging lessons and actually interacting with their students, connecting with them.
Yeah.
It's like asking a chef to spend more time filling out inventory lists and compliance reports than actually cooking the food. The main job suffers.
And that administrative overload, as we touched on earlier, doesn't just gobble up their time. It must generate so much stress. And it definitely dampens the enthusiasm, I'd imagine, of everyone involved, students included.
Absolutely. When teachers are feeling overwhelmed and under pressure, stressed out, that energy or lack of it inevitably trickles down into the classroom environment.
You can't hide that, can you?
Not really. And when you layer that on top of the emotional and psychological demand of the job, the constant pressure to perform, the feeling of being pulled in multiple directions, the potential for burnout, we discussed it, inevitably affects the quality of teaching.
How could it not?
It's incredibly difficult to be an enthusiastic, patient, and effective educator when you're feeling emotionally drained and like you're constantly fighting an uphill battle against the system itself.
Can you recall maybe a specific instance where that administrative burden really impacted your ability to prepare or deliver a lesson as well as you wanted to?
Oh, there were many times, honestly, when I felt like I was operating on fumes because I'd spent the weekend wrestling with paperwork instead of planning exciting creative activities for the week ahead.
Weekends gone to pay for work.
Yeah. I remember one particularly stressful period leading up to a school inspection. The sheer amount of documentation we had to prepare while also maintaining our regular teaching schedule was just immense.
Overwhelming.
Inspections are notoriously stressful. They really are. My lesson preparation definitely suffered during that time, and I felt like I wasn't giving my students the level of instruction, the quality of interaction they deserve. You feel guilty about it?
That sounds incredibly frustrating and like a recipe for burnout. So, what proactive steps can actually be taken to really address this issue? It feels like such a fundamental problem that needs attention.
Well, several strategies can make a significant difference, I think. Offering professional development specifically focused on time management and, importantly, stress reduction techniques for teachers would be a valuable investment.
Practical skills for coping.
Yes. And cultivating a stronger sense of community and peer support within schools is crucial. Creating more opportunities for open dialogue among teaching teams, providing platforms for sharing successful teaching practices, sharing what works, that can be incredibly beneficial.
So, talking to each other more.
Basically, yes.
Nathan.
Knowing that you're not facing these challenges in isolation, that others understand, can make a huge difference to morale and motivation, feeling less alone in it.
That emphasis on community and shared experiences sounds so important, so vital. Okay, now let's maybe pivot a bit and think about concrete solutions. What are some practical ways we can optimize and elevate the English teaching experience itself in the classroom?
Well, as we discussed earlier, actively embracing new teaching methodologies that prioritize interaction and actual engagement is key. Things like project-based learning, which encourages deeper exploration and application of the language.
Getting stuck into a topic.
Exactly. Group discussions that foster real communication and the exchange of ideas. And, as we said, thoughtfully integrating multimedia and online resources can make the subject matter more vibrant and relevant to students' actual lives.
So the focus shifts from just like rote learning to active application, from passively receiving information to actively using the language to achieve something, right?
That's it. That's the goal. And the strategic use of technology and online platforms opens up just a wealth of possibilities here.
Like what specifically?
Think about interactive language learning apps that make practice feel more like a game than a chore. Educational YouTube channels that offer diverse perspectives and real-world examples of English being used naturally.
Stuff they might watch anyway.
Precisely. And even virtual classroom environments that can create more immersive learning experiences, perhaps connecting with other classrooms elsewhere.
It's amazing how many digital tools are available now, really. It feels like it really could streamline lesson preparation for teachers, maybe automate some things,
Yes.
and just make learning much more captivating for students. Less like schoolwork, maybe.
What's particularly exciting, I think, is how technology can automate some of the more repetitive administrative tasks or assessment tasks, even, freeing up teachers to focus on what truly matters, connecting with their students, understanding their individual needs, and fostering a genuine interest, maybe even a love for the English language.
Getting back to the human element.
Exactly, the teaching part.
And you mentioned the importance of collaboration earlier. How crucial is it for teachers to connect with each other, share their insights, and learn from what's working well in different classrooms or schools?
Oh, it's absolutely vital. Creating opportunities, real structured opportunities for teachers to share their successful teaching methods, discuss challenges openly without fear of judgment, and exchange practical tips that can foster a culture of continuous improvement within a school.
Learning from each other's successes and failures.
Yes, learning directly from colleagues who have found effective ways to overcome specific hurdles, maybe with a tricky grammar point, or engaging a reluctant class can be far more impactful than generic top-down directives from admin.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you actually seen any real-world examples of schools that have successfully embraced these more contemporary approaches to teaching English? What kind of positive changes did they observe?
Yes, thankfully I have. I've seen schools where the integration of interactive technologies used well have led to a really noticeable increase in student engagement and actually a deeper understanding of the material, not just surface level.
So it actually works.
It can, yes.
Yeah.
And establishing partnerships with external organizations like language schools or cultural exchange programs can provide invaluable real-world context and motivation for students. Gives them a reason to learn.
A real purpose.
And even simple initiatives like implementing well-designed automated systems for routine knowledge checks or vocabulary quizzes can free up valuable teacher time for more personalized student interaction and support.
It's really encouraging to hear about these successes. It shows that positive change is definitely achievable, even with all the challenges.
It absolutely is.
Now, you mentioned earlier a specific experience you had using more innovative methods in one of your lessons. Would you be willing to share that with us? What happened and what kind of impact did it have on your students?
Of course. I remember feeling particularly disheartened by the just total lack of enthusiasm during a grammar lesson on comparative adjectives. Bigger than, more interesting than.
Oh, yeah. Dry stuff.
Very dry. So I decided to pretty much throw the textbook aside for a bit and instead have the students work in pairs to design and present their dream holiday brochures.
Ah, clever.
They had to compare different destinations, modes of transport, types of accommodation, activities, all while using comparative adjectives naturally in context.
Making it relevant.
Exactly. And the transformation was, honestly, remarkable. Suddenly, they were actively engaged, debating the merits of different options. Is Paris more romantic than Rome? That sort of thing.
Nice.
Helping each other with the grammar and genuinely enjoying using the language to persuade their partner. The brochures weren't perfect, grammatically speaking, not by a long shot.
That they were talking.
But the level of engagement and their willingness to actually communicate in English just skyrocketed. It was a really powerful reminder for me that making learning relevant and, dare I say it, fun can make all the difference.
That's a brilliant example of how a simple shift in approach, moving away from the abstract rule to the practical application, can yield such positive results.
It really can.
And have you heard similar stories from colleagues? People who've maybe transitioned from more traditional methods to these more modern interactive approaches. What kind of outcomes do they typically see?
Absolutely. I've spoken with several colleagues who were, initially a bit hesitant to move away from the methods they knew, the traditional stuff. Understandably so.
Change is hard.
It is. But once they started incorporating more communicative activities, more interactive tasks, project work, they consistently reported a significant boost in student participation and overall enthusiasm in the classroom.
You feel the difference.
Yeah. Students who were previously quiet and maybe reluctant to speak up in class started to feel more confident, more willing to take risks and express themselves in English.
That's fantastic.
Now, there are definitely some initial challenges, of course, and a learning curve involved in adapting their teaching style and finding the right resources, figuring out what worked.
Takes effort.
It does. But the overwhelming sentiment was much more positive in the long run. And the improvement in students' confidence and their willingness to actually use the language was really noticeable, really tangible.
And it's not just anecdotal evidence either, is it? There are like case studies and research from around the world that support these kinds of benefits.
That's right. There are numerous case studies and research findings that back up the effectiveness of these more student-centered and interactive teaching methodologies. For instance, some schools have successfully integrated things like virtual reality.
Wow, VR.
Yeah, to create really immersive language learning experiences that bring historical periods or different cultures to life in a way a textbook just can't. While others have forged partnerships with international schools to facilitate collaborative online projects, these give students authentic opportunities for cross-cultural communication in English with their peers abroad.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
It really is. It makes the language real, gives it a purpose beyond the classroom wall.
It's so inspiring to hear about these successful initiatives. It really underscores the potential for positive change, despite the hurdles. And that brings us to you, our listeners.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
We're genuinely interested in hearing about your own experiences. What have your experiences been with learning or perhaps teaching English in schools?
What are some methods or approaches that you found particularly effective or engaging? Or maybe particularly frustrating?
Exactly. What are some of the challenges you observed or maybe encountered yourself? Please do share your stories and insights with us. We really value hearing different perspectives.
Yes, your perspectives are incredibly valuable. What kind of teaching methods have truly resonated with you, either as a student or maybe as an educator yourself? What are some of the obstacles you've witnessed or faced? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
So, as we start to bring this deep dive to a close, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We certainly have.
We've explored the challenges posed by, well, sometimes outdated teaching methods, the significant burden of administrative tasks.
That admin creep.
Yeah. the very real issue of teacher burnout and its impact, and also the exciting possibilities that modern technologies and collaborative strategies offer for transforming English language education.
And I think it's just crucial to remember that improving the teaching and learning process isn't a solitary endeavor. It really is a collective effort. Absolutely. Every teacher, every administrator, even every student and parent has a role to play in fostering a more effective and engaging learning environment. Whether it's by experimenting with a new interactive activity, offering constructive feedback respectfully, or simply providing a supportive ear to a colleague who's struggling.
Absolutely. So, to the school leaders and educational administrators listening, we really encourage you to seriously consider the profound benefits of gradually implementing these kinds of innovative approaches.
Little by little.
Provide your teachers with the necessary resources, the training, and crucially, the ongoing support they need to experiment, adapt, and grow in their practice. Trust them.
Yes. And to all the dedicated English teachers out there, please don't be discouraged by the challenges. We know they're real.
We see you.
Be bold in trying new things, seek out creative solutions, collaborate with your peers, and remember the incredibly important work you do every single day.
So important. Even small steps towards modernization and collaboration can lead to really significant positive change in the lives of your students. Change is possible.
Very well said. Thank you all so much for joining us for this in-depth exploration of the challenges and the exciting opportunities within English language teaching.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your comments. We really do read them and share your thoughts on this important topic. We always appreciate hearing from them.
Avi, my English podcast.